Why can a boy feel like a girl and a girl feel like a boy? And the most important question, what does science actually say about this? The answer lies in gender identity. Identity is how we define ourselves. It can be national, when someone strongly identifies as American. Professional, when a person sees themselves as a specialist. Political, when someone clearly understands their beliefs. Religious, when a person chooses a faith different from the one they were born into. And there is gender identity. Sex and gender are closely related, but they are not the same. Biological sex is determined by physical characteristics, chromosomes, hormones, reproductive organs. Gender, on the other hand, is more subjective. It reflects how a person experiences themselves internally and socially. That's why gender identity is often called social gender. For most people, biological sex and gender identity are aligned. This is called being cisgender. But sometimes they don't match. A biologically male person may feel female. A biologically female person may feel male. Or a person's sense of self may not strongly align with either category. These people are called transgender. This has nothing to do with sexual orientation, and it is not necessarily the result of childhood trauma. Transgender people are mentally healthy. The mismatch they experience is not a mental illness. For a long time, however, society and even medicine refused to accept this. In the past, transgender people were subjected to so-called corrective treatments. These approaches were borrowed from punitive psychiatry. Patients were exposed to electric shocks. They were given nausea-inducing drugs while being shown images meant to trigger discomfort. The goal was simple: to suppress identity through fear and pain. This is known as aversive or reparative therapy. Today, these methods are considered unethical and are banned in most developed countries. Modern approaches focus on voluntary psychological support, individual or group counseling. But even that has limited effectiveness when it comes to changing gender identity. One tragic case clearly demonstrates how deeply rooted gender identity is. In the 1960s, a boy named Bruce Reimer suffered a catastrophic surgical injury during infancy. His penis was severely damaged. Psychologist John Money advised the parents to raise the child as a girl. Bruce was renamed Brenda, given hormones, and raised female. But despite years of effort, it didn't work. Brenda rejected traditionally female toys and clothing. During adolescence, severe depression and suicidal thoughts appeared. At age 14, Brenda told her parents the truth. "I am not a girl." Later, after multiple surgeries, Bruce transitioned back and changed his name to David. Today, this case is cited as strong evidence that gender identity cannot be imposed from the outside. Because of lessons like this, modern medicine has changed course. Today, transgender adults, and in some cases adolescents, can undergo gender transition. This process aims to align physical characteristics with internal identity. Those who complete medical transition are often called transsexual, though terminology continues to evolve. It may sound extreme. Changing a haircut can be stressful. Changing sex seems unimaginable. But medically, these procedures have existed for nearly a century. The first chest reconstruction surgeries were performed in Berlin in the late 1920s. In 1930, Danish artist Einar Wegener became Lily Elbe after one of the first known genital surgeries. These procedures are complex, but not primitive. They are not violent mutilations, as myths often claim. Modern surgical outcomes allow many transgender people to live full social and intimate lives. Surgery, however, is only one part of transition. Hormone therapy plays a central role. Transgender men may take testosterone. Transgender women may take estrogen and anti-androgens. Hormones gradually change voice, body fat distribution, muscle mass, and other secondary sex characteristics. But the most important factor is internal identity. Transition is not about becoming someone else. It is about aligning the outside with what has always existed inside. Gender identity conflict is not a sentence. It is a human condition, and modern medicine does not create transgender people. It helps them live in harmony with themselves when biology and identity do not match. People like to say that hiccups mean someone is thinking about you. That may sound nice, but biology tells a very different story. Hiccups are not mysterious. They are mechanical. Your lungs work like a pump. To inhale, they must expand. Most people think ribs and shoulders do the work. But the real hero is the diaphragm. It's a large muscle under your lungs. When it contracts, it pulls the lungs downward, drawing air inside. That's why your belly moves when you breathe deeply. A hiccup is a sudden spasm of the diaphragm. Air rushes in, your vocal cords snap shut, and you hear the sound. But why do we have hiccups at all? One theory suggests they are ancient, a leftover from early animals moving from water to land. Even human babies hiccup in the womb before their lungs are fully developed. The most likely explanation is simpler. Hiccups help young mammals. They coordinate breathing and feeding and remove excess air from the stomach to make room for milk. That's why only mammals hiccup, and why babies do it so often. The real trigger behind hiccups is the vagus nerve. This nerve runs from your brain through your throat, lungs, diaphragm, and deep into your digestive system. It controls breathing, swallowing, heart rate, and digestion. When air enters the stomach from eating too fast, soda, alcohol, the vagus nerve panics and activates the hiccup reflex. Cold food, hot food, laughter, coughing, or sudden emotions can do the same. That's also why hiccup cures look strange. They stimulate or confuse the vagus nerve until it resets. Holding your breath or breathing into a paper bag raises carbon dioxide levels in your blood. Your body immediately regains control and shuts the hiccups down. So yes, this is one rare case where folk remedies actually make scientific sense. Music follows us from the very beginning of life. It starts with lullabies and ends with endless playlists on social media. People all over the world spend enormous amounts of money just to listen to their favorite artists. And those artists earn millions from their music. But why does music play such a huge role in our lives? When did humans invent it? And what was it actually for? Today, you'll get the answers. And there's a surprise at the end. The earliest physical evidence that our ancestors deliberately created sound comes from Slovenia. Archaeologists discovered an ancient bone flute in a cave once inhabited by Neanderthals. According to research, it dates back around 40,000 years. Some scientists, however, were skeptical. They argued it was just an animal bone, and the holes were tooth marks left by a predator. The skepticism wasn't really about the bone, it was about Neanderthals. For a long time, researchers believed Neanderthals were far less intelligent than Homo sapiens. They were thought to lack creativity and symbolic thinking. They didn't decorate their caves much, and most of their tools had purely practical purposes. Cave paintings and musical instruments, the story went, were brought to Europe later by Homo sapiens migrating from Africa. But that view has changed. In recent decades, archaeologists discovered that Neanderthals were far more sophisticated than previously assumed. German archaeologist Nicholas Conrad from the University of Tübingen has stated that Neanderthals most likely created and played musical instruments. At least 8 different flutes have been found in Germany alone, and Spanish archaeologist Ruth Blasco agrees. Neanderthals probably made music regularly. The reason we haven't found more instruments is simple. Many of them were likely made of wood, which doesn't survive tens of thousands of years. We see the same pattern today among indigenous tribes that still follow traditional lifestyles. Their instruments are often wooden, but instruments are only part of the story. There was a much older and more powerful musical tool available to our ancestors: the human voice. Scientists believe that a voice capable of producing controlled sounds emerged in hominins around 530,000 years ago. This became possible thanks to specific tongue muscles and muscles attached to the hyoid bone. Archaeological finds show that this bone was present not only in Neanderthals, but also in earlier human species. Anthropologist Stephen Mithin, in his book The Prehistory of Music, notes that the hyoid bone has been found in skulls of multiple ancient humans. For example, it existed in Homo heidelbergensis, who lived in Europe around 700,000 years ago, and even in ancestors who lived nearly 2 million years ago, the vocal apparatus had a similar structure. which means our distant ancestors were likely capable of producing complex vocal sounds, possibly even singing. But why? From a biological perspective, sound signals are extremely important for humans. Rhythm and pitch are powerful tools for transmitting information between individuals. A group of scientists from MIT, led by cognitive researcher Stephen Brown, proposed an intriguing idea. Before humans learned to speak, they sang. According to this theory, the lexical structure of language emerged only before that. Early humans likely communicated through melodic, rhythmic vocalizations. In other words, music may have been humanity's first language. Anthropologist Gilbert Rouget, who spent much of his life living among the Babinga Pygmies in Africa, described how refusing to participate in communal music was considered a sin. He suggested that music acted as a kind of social glue, something that bound people together into groups, and that unity was essential for survival. That might explain why we instinctively sing together at gatherings, why crowds lose themselves at concerts, why rhythm synchronizes people emotionally. Music didn't just entertain us, it helped turn individuals into communities, and sometimes music still connects people in unexpected ways. And now tell us in the comments, what music do you love most? In 1916, Albert Einstein predicted the existence of gravitational waves. They were a small consequence of his general theory of relativity. But understanding them is not easy, not even for scientists. Because to understand relativity, you must accept one uncomfortable idea. Much of what you learned in school is not exactly true. Planets do not really move along curved orbits. They move in straight lines through curved space-time. We are not falling toward Earth. Earth is constantly accelerating upward into us. And gravity itself is not a force. It is a distortion in the fabric of space and time. Strange? Definitely. That's why Newton's physics is still used in everyday life. It works well for bridges, cars, and rockets, but in reality, modern physics is ruled by relativity. So what can we actually understand about gravitational waves, and why did scientists spend decades trying to detect them? First, how do we know Einstein was right? One of the best proofs is already in your pocket: GPS. Satellites move fast and orbit high above Earth. Because of this, time for them passes slightly faster than for us. The difference is tiny, about 38 microseconds per day. But GPS needs extreme precision. If Einstein were wrong, navigation errors would grow by kilometers every day. GPS would be useless, yet it works perfectly. So what are gravitational waves? A wave is a disturbance that carries energy. Water waves move through water. Electromagnetic waves move through fields. Light, radio, X-rays. Gravitational waves are different. They do not shake matter. They shake space-time itself. If a gravitational wave passes through you, your length and width change just a little. The problem is that space-time is incredibly stiff. If we could somehow bend it directly, it would be hundreds of billions of times harder than diamond. That's why gravitational waves are so weak. Even atomic-sized creatures would not feel them. So why are they so faint? If gravity holds together stars and galaxies, because gravitational waves are only a side effect of gravity. Like ripples left behind by a passing ship, detecting them is like trying to feel vibrations from a subway train while standing kilometers away. And yet, scientists eventually succeeded. How they did it and what exactly they detected. In the previous video, we learned what gravitational waves are and why they are so incredibly hard to detect. Now only two questions remain. What created the signal scientists finally detected? And why do gravitational waves matter at all? More than 1 billion years ago, two black holes collided. Each was about 30 times heavier than the Sun, yet smaller than a large city. They were born from massive stars that once exploded as supernovae. For millions of years, these black holes orbited each other, slowly losing energy through gravitational waves. As they moved closer, they spun faster and faster, like two people pulling each other in while spinning. In the final seconds, they were separated by just a few kilometers and rotating hundreds of times per second, close to the speed of light. During the last moment of collision, they released more energy than the sun will produce during its entire lifetime, past and future combined. That energy spread through the universe as gravitational waves, and in 2015, after traveling for over 1 billion years, those ripples reached Earth. The timing was almost unbelievable. Just days before the official launch of upgraded detectors, the signal arrived. Only 2 detectors on opposite sides of the United States were sensitive enough to catch it. Together, they confirmed it was real. So why does this matter? Because for the first time, we didn't just see the universe. We heard it. Gravitational waves gave us a completely new way to observe reality. They provided the first direct proof that black holes truly exist. They allow us to study events that produce no light at all. And in the future, even more powerful detectors will go into space, with arms millions of kilometers long. What we learn from them may one day seem obvious, just like electricity or nuclear physics do today. Studying gravitational waves is like looking through binoculars into the future. We don't yet know what technologies they will lead to, but history tells us one thing clearly. When humanity learns to listen to the universe, everything eventually changes. And that's baby science for you.